Welcome to the first, or we're testing out, Let's Play reviewing. Uh, if this has a catchier title when it goes up, you'll know. And you'll know that it is between recording and doing that we came up with it. So we're gonna, as is the video that either auto-played or you clicked on, well, we're gonna talk about Newt One, which is a platformer out for, I believe, basically every platform. Um, I don't know if it's on all of them currently or if it's still sort of mid port to a couple of them, but it is a small. It is the first game by the studio called DEVNARI, which in watching the credits I realize is because the first names of the two developers were Dev and Ari, and so it's Dev and Ari. Yeah, I thought it was pretty delightful. Here I'm Diego. Here we got Sonny with us.
Hi, y'all.
And yeah, let's hop right in. So this is I mentioned before, this is a platformer, but it's I think more in line with sort of like your Banjo Kazooies, your collectathons.
Yeah, I would say so as well. And it's interesting. So normally I am not a big fan of platformers. I've played. I think the last platformer I played was Banjo. Or no, it was Crash Bandicoot Entranced for the Game Boy Advance when I was in maybe middle school. So generally speaking, I'm not a huge platformer person. They tend to frustrate me very easily. And so it is good that this game had the platforming elements. I was not surprised to find that they were a little frustrating for me, therefore. But the music and the colors I thought were just fantastic. More than enough, I think, to make up for the sort of PlayStation 1-esque sort of janky platforming.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, let's talk about sort of the aesthetics of it. I feel like the real hook of this game is it is a music based platformer. It is a platformer that is about sort of getting the world alive through music. And so you as Newt One, Newt is in the animal, one is in the number, but spelled out. I still don't. We'll get to the story later.
Yeah.
You as you walk around, you wake up the environment. It is all sort of grayscale, black and white. But as you touch pieces of the environment, they spring into colors, and the colors are very vibrant. They're very bright. They are. I think my touchstone might be like a Viva Pinata, but like
I
more.
was also reminded of Viva Pinata. Yeah, I wasn't sure what your touchstone for it was going to be, but yes, I had the exact same experience. I was looking at it as the game kind of booted up, and I was reminded very much of the intro screen to Viva Pinata. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely that. Yeah, a very sort of I'll say like Mexican or Mexican American feeling vibrancy to the colors. Just incredibly bright, and not just solid colors, but like, you know, heading more towards sort of your neons and your highlighters.
Yeah.
But not entirely,
And
but towards
and
them.
like big, like bold zigzags. Nothing in this game is intended to look realistic whatsoever. Like there are the thing that I is like most in my mind are these big plants. I'm not sure how to describe them exactly, but they're kind of these big flowering plants that are like this bright pink zigzagged with green. As you touch them, they light up in this just like really amazing kind of thing as you walk past them.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, the music is sort of the main part of this. To touch on the story, we'll get sort of deeper into that a little bit later. But the story of this is you are waking up the world through music because the music has been taken away. And so the last collectathon game that I played was Snake Pass. This is the I think it was Switch and Xbox. You play as a snake, And it's these, big 3D environments, and you have to figure out how to wrap around things, how to, you can't jump because you're a snake, and your snake has snake physics on them. And so you have to figure out how to effectively navigate these platformer worlds as someone who doesn't even have legs. And so with that as sort of my last collectathon thing, I think I was a lot more forgiving of the actual sort of platforming elements of it because I could jump. Whoa.
The jumping is something that I have a lot to say about. Just, and I don't know if we want to get to the actual like game mechanics later, but
let's do some of the game mechanics because I think it can also we'll tie that in with the I'll tie that in at least with the music. I think it's really interesting. So one of the first things of the tutorial that it tells you is that you can jump with the B button, which is a little jarring because I'm used to the A button being for jumping.
Yes, that was something that tripped me up as well. Also, B being advance and A being back.
I have
in the menus.
Okay. I was gonna bring this up later. So I wrote my notes all down on paper while I'm playing the game, right? And so there's not like a real timed element, but you can get a bonus if you beat a level quickly. And so I would pause the game so as not to just keep it running. And the second time I paused the game to write down some notes, I hit the B button to go back from the menu. But the thing is, in the menu, the B button is restart. So I was right at the end of the level.
No.
I had to make one jump to get to the end of the level, and it just restarted all of it. Oh my god.
Oh no.
Yeah.
But yeah. So the control setup was a little bit jarring for me and hard to get used to.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah.
Platformers being, I might say, the oldest genre of video game, it is unusual that they were so unconventional with it. Like it's not the kind. It's a short enough game that it continued to trip me up all the way through the end. Like I would expect one button to do one thing, because just even generally not with platformers, just with the third person game, you're like, oh, I have this maybe secondary item. I'm going to use this secondary item with maybe this one button. But no, that instead sends me back to the last checkpoint.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so that really tripped me up. But I found really interesting, not only that the B button was to jump, but that one of the first tutorial things was to hold down B to like continue hopping. So the second that you touch the ground, you keep jumping.
Yes.
And so I thought, because this was maybe the second or third thing in the tutorial, oh, this is going to come up a lot. This is going to be like one of the big platforming things.
Yes.
But this is a game where you want to touch all of the ground constantly. And so if you're bouncing on it, you don't touch everything. And if you're bouncing on it, if you run up against a wall, you bounce back. And so you're more likely to maybe fall off, as I did a few times.
Yeah. I several times accidentally flung myself backwards into space because I bounced off a wall or off an object that had just like kind of a weird hitbox. I hit the corner of it and just flung myself backwards off the platform. And if you have to have your guide save you, if you have to reset, you lose an achievement for the level, which is kind of a bummer. But yeah, the jumping mechanic, the bouncing, it interacts with a tool that you can pick up, a sort of a power-up, the wings. And the wings let you very pretty usual, like they let you glide, they make you jump higher. It's kind of a standard like power-up, but it doesn't turn off the bounce, which means that when you are gliding, you have to let go of the B button, because if you're still holding the B button when you hit the owl platform, and I do want to talk about the owls at some point because they're amazing, but if you hit the platform that you're trying to bounce off of with the wings, because you have to hold B to glide, you will fling yourself into space, which can be very frustrating when you're in the middle of a platforming section because you have to start over at the beginning
Yeah.
and go through it again with the wings. And I found that I found that very, very frustrating.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring it up with the owls, because the owls are where I felt the bouncing thing the most. Because
Yeah.
so the owls are, I think you were bringing this up, but I think that they are a genuinely cool and a new thing to bring to a collectathon, which is you have to collect these owls, which help you progress to the next area. The owls are these
Yeah.
adorable little owls that form platforms that you can hop between to get to the next area.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a collectathon, usually the collecting is just to get more achievements towards the end, or you need X many of these in order to beat the level, or something to that degree. But these owls are pivotal for progression, in I think a way that has a lot of potential, and some of the potential I also want to talk about later. But with regards to the bouncing, they would form like a little bridge in sort of sections. So there would be like little rocks that you would hop across to get across a river. Not literally, of course, but mechanically. And I would hop and I would hold down the B button to continue to hop between these. But if the momentum was just off, I would go too far or not far
Yeah.
enough, and essentially slide off.
And I found additionally when you're jumping from owl platform to owl platform, it is occasionally very hard to see how far away the next platform is, just because of the I don't know if draw distance is the right word. I don't know the technical terms, but the
Depth perception's hard.
Yeah, when you're standing on one owl platform, the way that the game like loads the next platform, like it is there, but it's hard to see how far away from you it is because the camera can't pan up very well.
Yeah. The angles from which it is around you sort of is a very limited range.
And I found occasionally that there would be like level geometry that would get in the way. Like there'd be an archway, and as you were trying to see the next platform, or even sometimes mid jump, the archway would get in the way, and then you just were taking a leap of faith, which oftentimes meant slipping off the owl platform and having to start over again.
Yeah.
Which was something that I was not super happy about, because platformers are very difficult for me, even in the best of circumstances.
Yeah. I want to sort of also, I've mentioned that we I think we both mentioned this sort of momentum part to the movement, and like, not all not all platformers are sort of have momentum base with the jumps. And I think it's really weird that this one did, for the same reason that I think it's weird that you can hold B to continue to bounce, because if you want to touch everything in the level, if you want to have that sort of level of meticulousness, it behooves you to be able to turn on a dime.
Yeah.
And so if you're going one way and you just miss one piece of ground and you try to turn and you kind of just do like a little J around it instead of just pivoting in a V.
Yeah.
That was also kind of frustrating, and I very soon stopped trying to 100% get all of the ground. So we should also mention the ground and the environment in general is made largely of like these hexes of varying dimensions. Like not every hex is the same size, but and some are like really tall, and you use those to hop up in a staircase fashion. But it's when you touch a hex, so it's nice that you can pretty easily see the discrete sections that make up what you need to touch. But it also means that, I know what I need to do, but just the momentum of how the character works in general gets in the way of that.
Yes, and something that eventually helps you collect more of the pieces are two items: drums and wands. And something that I found really interesting and frustrating about this was that you would collect a power-up in a level, but oftentimes you wouldn't get the power-up until the middle of the level, which meant that you either had to go back or just finish the level and get the second 50% of all the pieces, but not the first. And you don't get to keep the power-ups when you finish the level. When you move to the next level, you are power-up-less, unless some of the levels you start with the wand, and sometimes you start with the drums, but it's random almost.
Yeah, so I think the wand is, after you collect it, you have it for all the levels in that world. So the map is sectioned off into these four discrete worlds, and you get the wand after like the fourth or fifth level out of what, six or seven?
Six, I think six. I think they all had
Okay.
six.
Um,
The Glacier World may have had seven, but I'm not sure.
no, I think it also had six. But the thing is, so when I played through it in the cloud world, I played through the level where you're supposed to get the wand, but I just missed the wand.
Yeah, sometimes they're hard to find. Sometimes the power ups are like in a direction that the level seems to be guiding you away from, and so you're like, well, I'll get back to it eventually, and
And
then
that
you
level
just
ends. You're like, oh hey,
yeah, you
there's the
don't.
end, and by that point you've forgotten. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I beat the cloud world without having gotten the wand. And in order to beat the game, you had to collect all the wands because
No.
and so I'd be like, oh, which level was it that had the wand? Which one said it was supposed to have the wand in it? And oh man. But the thing is too, these power-ups are really satisfying. I love using the drum and I love using the wand.
I love the drums.
One of the first moments that like made me really feel this game was the first level. You get the drum, you get it, and then there's this like little narrow walkway, and then there's this little mini arena, I'll say. So you're surrounded by these trees that are on little hills in this circle with the path forward in front of you, and you can charge up the drum, and then when you release it, it does a bigger drum hit that you can see the sort of orb of effect around you that it lights up all of those pieces. And going from, I have this like bubble of gray around me to in one drum hit, they all became colorful. That was super satisfying. But like you were saying, going back in levels to try and fill that in sections where it seemed like it was intended for you to have that. There is this one
Yeah.
where there's like this corkscrew of tiles. So you're walking in a single walkway, and there's this corkscrew of gray tiles that are spinning
Is this
around
one
you.
where it's
Yeah.
rotating like around you?
See, I went down there and I I walked along the bottom of this corkscrew as it's rotating all around me, because another mechanic of this game that I think is designed to help it be an easier, more introductory kind of platformer or collectathon is there's a button that just sends you immediately back to the last checkpoint. This is very rarely useful. But if you're doing a dumb thing like I was, if you're trying to walk along this corkscrew that you're supposed to, I think, maybe go back to later once you have either the drum or the wand, I forget which was actually in that level, then I found it helpful, I guess, but I could also have just walked off and been in the same position.
Yeah, speaking of that reset button, there is a level, I believe, in the island zone, where you are standing. You get to a point where there are platforms that are tipping 90 degrees, and you kind of have to jump from platform to platform. But the checkpoint in that level is on a platform that is tipping, and so there's a 50-50 chance when you reset to it that you are just falling when you get there. And so at that point, I just was like hitting the reset button over and over, waiting for it to be flat so I could leave and hit another checkpoint.
Or better yet,
And
or better yet,
yeah.
when you hit it, you're just slightly above the ground, so you have like a foot to fall. You hit it while it's horizontal, where you're able to land on it. But before you reach it, it flips and it just like catapults you away.
Yeah. There were several times, and in fact, I think I noticed it most in the island area, and I think that's because the island area had a lot of moving platforms. You had to get on a platform, and it would carry you to a new section of the level.
That was
And
was that also the world that had like there were a few that had like the essentially the entire map was sort of spinning
yes,
around a central point.
yes, it was, and that was the one as well where there were some like L-shaped platforms or S-shaped platforms, I suppose, that would tip, and you
Yep.
kind of had to run up the slope to the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that part, I found myself like just kind of skipping whole sections of the map because I would stand on a platform, but if you're just a little bit, if you are standing on the crevice between the moving platform and the land, the platform will leave without you and you just fall straight down, or you kind of clip into the ground and then are shot out into space. And that happened to me a couple times before I was finally like, you know what? I'm taking the L on this one, and I'm just gonna go ahead and skip the parrot or whatever it is that I'm trying to find up in that area.
Yeah.
But and that happened to me a couple times in the island zone.
And you, dear listener, may notice that sounds like a wide variety of sort of game mechanics, platforming mechanics to be used in just one world with 6 levels in it. And the answer is yes, that is a lot. The game does this thing where it introduces a lot of really cool things and sort of only goes so far with them. You know, there's a lot of mechanics. Like, I think that, like, that corkscrew, if you have the wand and you're walking through this corkscrew, and so all around you are these things lighting up, that is...
Have we described what the wand does?
Oh, no, we haven't. So the wand...
Okay, so the wand... so the wand, when you get it, it essentially acts as like an extension of your body, and as you walk past things, it reaches out past you and touches them to light them up. So it's essentially sort of a larger area of effect as the drums, and it acts automatically. As long as you're holding it, the pieces around you light up automatically, and you don't have to get as close to them to light them. You don't have to touch them physically with your character model.
So what I was thinking about when I first got the wand was the end of Journey. So in Journey, you know, you sing, and that sort of makes things that are otherwise sort of like decayed glow again.
Gotcha.
And at the end of Journey, there's this really cathartic moment. The song for it is Catharsis, because the flow of Journey... Oh, Flow was an earlier game that the same studio made. The arc of Journey, it draws directly from, you know, like the 3-act structure, Hero of a Thousand Faces kind of deal, where you physically rise and fall with the action. You know, you climb a mountain and you fall into a pit, and you have to climb back up from the pit to the top of the mountain, and at the end of which is the climax, the catharsis, where you and the person you are playing with are just constantly glowing with this energy, and everything around you as you fly past it just glows too, and it's really awesome and important feeling, and works because you had all of this journey beforehand to get to that point. And so I think it was to its detriment that I had that as the touchstone, because this was like level 3 that you see the first wand. And I'm like, oh, are they gonna like try and have a lot more of these rising and falling things? But instead, what I got to was, oh, you should have the wand for most of the game. It should hold a wand from you, and then when you get to a certain point in the game, you just have it constantly, and that can make the levels a lot bigger, that can make the levels a lot more complex, and you don't have to touch everything with you. Because you may have noticed I mentioned music is like an integral part of this game, sort of foundationally. And
it's literally built into the world around you, not just mechanics wise, but if you look up at you're constantly surrounded by space. You're kind of in this void, and if you look up at the sky, the stars are musical rests. Like, it is integral. Music is integral to the game.
I don't think I noticed
like,
that.
It is physical. Yeah, they're the rest, like in sheet music. They're sheet music rests that are the stars in the sky.
That's great.
It was so cool looking up at it, because I think I stopped just to look at it for a little bit. Like, it was so cool. Like, such an interesting choice for that. Like, they didn't have to do that. The sky could have looked like anything, and they decided to. They could have had just pinpricks or normal, like, star-shaped stars, but they had musical rests, and I think that is, I don't know, I could go on and on about how, like, the silence of space, like, connects with the idea of, like, resting, and the only way to really see them is to, like, pause and look, like, move your camera to tilt up. I just think it's so interesting that, like, one little thing kind of made the game for me a little bit, like, just seeing that.
Yeah, no, there were
really
definitely
cool.
a lot of skyboxes that I just like looked up at and admired. I didn't happen to see the rest notes, but it was like there are a lot of beautiful sunsets or just like purple skies that really caught me. And like we mentioned before, the visual design for this game is really nice. You want to make the world alive because it looks beautiful. And in addition to that, when you make the environment more alive, each time something around you goes from black and white to colorful, it it makes some music happen. It contributes notes to the background music, all of which is fantastic, I should say. The music in the game.
I
I
agree.
want the soundtrack.
It's so good. Like I was worried that it would just kind of be the same homeworld song, but each area has new unique music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And music that is contributed by, when you use the wings, there's this like light tinkling sound that plays that I want to
Yeah.
accompany every track, which also makes the bouncing frustrating because I want to keep using the wings so that way I still have
Yeah.
that with me. Or when you're using the drums, there's this drum
Yes.
beat that happens. And
Yes,
so
yes, I was
when you're
just gonna say
using the
that, yes.
wand, what is around you is constantly lighting up with the sound of, instead of you individually having to touch each individual thing, there's all
Yes.
this music around you that's really beautiful, but not as tied into the game as I would hope it is. So for example, like the music is really good, but I still don't know, when you go into a level, it's real quiet, and as you progress, the music slowly gets more and bigger. But I couldn't tell if that was because the tracks are really long and they all intentionally start quiet and sort of know what arc you're going to go across, or whether the amount of ground that you have lit up, the amount of the world you've made come back to life, actually affects the volume or number of instruments in the music.
Yeah.
I played through the whole of that game. I don't know, because it seemed to have the same effect either way.
Yeah, and it was kind of, it was sort of, I don't know, I guess it was kind of the same in each level. Like, because most of the levels, I would say, I tried to get all of the collectible notes, but I didn't necessarily try very hard to step on all of the platforms, especially in levels where I didn't have the wand, because I was kind of trying to move quickly from level to level, because I wanted to see more of the game. I wanted to see more of the worlds, and also I didn't want to do any more platforming than strictly
And
necessary.
also, if you get to the end of a level and you see the gate right in front of you and it says 99% up in the corner, and you turn back around and you don't see anything that's black and white, you're like, oh.
It's almost certainly one little plant somewhere that you
flower.
just didn't step on, or something like that. Yeah, and there were times, yeah, where it said that, and I looked back at the level, and then I turned my character back to the gate and just like went through, because I'm like, I'm not going all the way back there. I don't know where it is. And when you go through the gate, actually, this is something that I do want to talk about. When you go through the gate, it tells you which achievements you got for the level, but then you hit the like next button, and it just kind of, it replays the same like achievement get sound and shows you the achievement again, and then cuts.
Do you want to know why it
very
does that? Did
quickly.
you figure out why it does that?
Nope, I have no
It's
idea.
because you hit the B button to do next. And you know what else the B button does?
Jump, doesn't it?
Yeah, so you jump out of the area as it's loading, land back in the area, and it says, oh, you got these achievements. And so one time what I did to test this out
Extremely good.
was I just kept holding down the B button. I kept hitting the B button. So that way I would keep bouncing. And I loaded back into the overworld area. And then I loaded back into the overworld area because it was going through the process of saying, load Newt One back into the overworld area at this point twice over, because I was able to hit next by the time that it did that.
Yeah, so this game is, it's charmingly glitchy, I would say.
Yeah.
There are you'll notice that we haven't talked at all about the overarching story yet.
The story is also charming. So
Yeah.
there's a clutter to the delivery of the story
Yeah,
that is, I think, very in line with the aesthetics.
Yeah.
But also means that like you gotta bring a lot of investment yourself.
Yeah.
So the story is Newt One is this creature. Oh, wait. I want to really quick go back to one of my favorite mechanics of the game. I was about to describe what Newt One looks like.
Yes.
But the thing is, in each world, Newt gets a different costume.
Yeah.
And the collectibles, I forget however
50,
many it
it's
is.
50.
Every 50 music notes you get,
Yeah.
you get a new color palette for the costumes. They're so good.
It was really
They're so
good.
lovely. there's a button dedicated to just swapping through the colors.
Yeah, it's really is fantastic. Like when you go back to the overworld, it switches you back to like the default green or whatever. And every time I was like, no, I will wear the white robe. How dare you?
No, I want the one that's blue and yellow.
Yeah. I don't know, it's fun. I spent a weirdly large amount of time like flicking through all the new outfits and being like picking the one that I was gonna use. I don't know, it just I like that you get something very tangible for the collectathon portion, and as soon as you hit 50 notes, there's like a thrum, like a guitar strum, and it changes your outfit to the new one that you got. Like you don't have to check. It tells you.
Yeah. It's great.
It's really, really good.
Oh man, there's this one, I think it was in the cloud level, where like the colors were just this like lime green and just like bright pink. And it was just like the loudest outfit I've ever seen, and it was so good. It was so good. But yeah, so back to the story. The Newt is this little creature who is destined to wake up the forest and complete a challenge at the same time, and needs to wake up the 4 elders? 3?
Yeah.
3 elders to become the 4th elder.
Yeah.
And you have a friend, and
his name is Corno?
Yep, that's it.
It's C-O... No. C-U-R...
Is it Corno?
I think it's C-U-R-N-O, Corno. And I don't know if it's... He's a little rhinoceros kind of guy, like an elephant, maybe?
Except the horn is detachable.
What?
Because at one point, Newt uses the horn, or is supposed to use the horn, and that actually means if Newt used the horn, that Corno would vanish and go away because their purpose was fulfilled, and so they would Spider-Man dust out of here. They would, I don't feel too good, Mr. Stark, out of here. And Newt goes like, I can't do that. You're my friend. What am I, helping this world for, except for, my friends? And then they're like, that was the last test. Congratulations. And then the game ends.
You didn't kill your friend.
Yeah.
Congrats. And it's like, whoa.
There is charm to the story, but it's very peripheral.
It is. And it's a little weird. Like the story takes weird twists and turns, but they're not, it's not like, it's not really like a plot twist. It's more like they introduced new information that had until then no bearing on the story, and then it's suddenly the one that I'm thinking specifically of is like Corno says, all right, you have to take the test. The elder, like the Great Slumber has come upon the world, and you're destined to wake up the world. But then later he's like, the last elder did it 10 years ago. And it's like, does this happen every 10 years? Oh no.
The last time someone tried this test, they failed and became the evil version of you.
Yeah, and it's
and
like,
you were born out of all that was good of them, and the evil version was born out of all that was bad of them, as they were split into 2, like Liquid and Solid Snake. And then the other person doesn't come up. I expected the other, like the bad version, Newt 0, Newt -1.
Nega Newt.
to like come up and be like, I don't know, like the last villain or something.
Yeah, or
then
to be like,
never mentioned again.
Yeah, like
never mentioned again.
Like, I thought that maybe they were gonna have something, because there are these things called disruptors in the game that which are really cool.
They're my favorite part of that game.
They're super cool, but I thought it was gonna be something like, anti-Newt is the one who's setting them, or you're gonna see him setting one up and you have to chase him, but as he walks he takes the color out. Like I thought there was gonna be
so sick.
Like that would have been really cool, but he just never shows up.
Yeah, so this is a great place to talk about those disruptors. So the disruptors are they have this area where inside, the further in you go, the more the music is muted.
Yeah.
And inside it is all gray, and you can't light anything up. None of your powers work until you sort of hit the disruptor in the middle of this field. Those I think should have been the heart. I think if I were designing this game, I would maybe de-emphasize some of the collectathon bits of it and instead focus a little bit more on the disruptor parts, because I think the mixture of the disruptor and the owls, in a way that it was kind of used towards the end, was some of the best feeling stuff in that game, where I need to figure out how to navigate this area without my powers, so that way I can then sort of unlock this disruptor, and then I get to sort of slide through this area in that catharsis fashion of, this is, the music just bursts back in and it sounds so good.
Yeah, like it really is like Diego is not understating this at all. There is a literal explosion of sound when you remove the disruptor. It comes back in all at once, very loud, but it's not like bad loud. It's a return to the normal volume, but you've been inside the disruptor for so long and it's been so quiet, and then you just boom, and if you're holding the wand, things around you just start lighting up instantly, and it's really cool to look at and watch, and I agree. I think that should have been the heart of these levels.
And I think part of what makes them work so well is a thing about the level design that I appreciated that they did a lot. I will still say inconsistently, but quite frequently, is they understood. So Newt on the way down can sort of like slow down the jump a touch, especially with the wings, and as such, it is a lot easier to move down and move further when moving down than it is to move up. You know, I'd say it's sort of gravity and platformers tend to work, but they were really smart about this in a lot of areas where there could have been backtracking and sort of building maybe like a spiral up.
Yeah.
So it is difficult to get to that top point, but once you're at that top point, even if there's nowhere further up to go, it's a lot easier to hop down instead of backtrack that entire way.
Yeah.
And I think especially with the disruptors in, I forget if it was the later cloud or island section. It was the island that had all the spinny bits, right?
Yes, yeah.
In the later island, I think they used it to some good effect there. But yeah, again, inconsistently. Like there are still spots, like we were mentioning the corkscrew earlier, where you know you can't get back to there easily. You have to go through the entirety of it.
Yeah.
And this is also a piece that frustrated me some about the glacier level. So we mentioned the momentum before, and the last world is this ice world that just takes that momentum frustration up because it's ice.
Yeah, like it's very Mario. Like you are always slip sliding. You can't stop, and there are also, so the drums will freeze water and magma if you the drums next to it, but it cracks. You have a couple seconds of it being frozen, and then it cracks. And so one of my struggles with the ice level was that I would do the drum to freeze the ice, but then I would slide away from it, and then I had to do it again while trying to run back, and that means that you have to hold the A button to activate the drums, move the stick to get back to the ice, and then also hit the B button to jump at the same time that you release the drums. And that's a lot of thumb work for someone who doesn't play fighting games.
Yeah, and someone who does play fighting games too. And this also sort of highlighted for me part of my hopes for the drums. So the thing is, when you hold down the button for the drums, you hear this drum beat in the back, and it adds to the music. And that made me wish that maybe that would be a moment where you could have a rhythmic element to the game, where maybe instead of holding down the drum button to do a single large area of effect, maybe you are rhythmically tapping with the beat of the music, so that way the music that is playing is more tied to how you are playing the game.
Yeah.
And maybe, you know, the higher combo you get with the beats, then the larger area of effect around you. So that way, as you're going, you can try and keep up the beat of the drum. And the ice thing would be a lot less frustrating, because instead of having to release and then quickly jump off of it, instead this you are keeping it up, and then you could still have the addition of the music in the background from the beat of the drum.
Yeah, that's really cool. I hadn't even thought about bringing a rhythm game element into it. I think that's really cool. I mean, I would have loved that, because I love rhythm games. I think they're super fun. But yeah, I think the music could have been more like, physically speaking, the music is integral to the game just because you have all these items that interact with it, but they're all connected because they're all musical instruments, but they're not connected mechanically.
Yeah. Like,
And
it doesn't feel like you are influencing the music as much as the game suggests you should be feeling it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, just going back to the disruptors, that's like a really good example of it, because there is no music, and you can't light anything up, and so the lack of music physically limits you.
Yeah.
Within the confines of the disruptor's sort of area of effect. And I think that's if the rest of the game had kind of followed that same premise, I think I would have been really, really happy with it.
Yeah. And even with, or maybe especially in a collectathon, I think that was a really great tool to use, because you are going through an area like at least twice.
Yeah.
Because of the disruptor. You go through it once to undisrupt, to reawaken, I'll say, and then you go through again to reawaken the ground itself.
Yeah.
And in a collectathon, which is about this sort of sense of exploration and this desire to know where everything is, it makes a lot more sense to like have to have something that mechanically wants you to do that as well. And yeah, again, I think the same maybe should have been more with the music tied in.
The next thing I kind of want to talk about is level length and complexity, because I had a lot of thoughts about this, specifically the fact that as I progressed from like the forest zone to the island zone, and then eventually to Cloud and then Glacier, which is the last one.
See, I did Cloud first and then Island.
Interesting. Okay. As I was going through the island zone, I realized that the levels weren't necessarily getting, like, I expected to get my power-ups and then kind of be presented with levels in which I would need to use them in complex ways, but because you don't get the power-ups at the beginning of each level after you collect them, the levels just sort of get longer and there's more stuff, but they're not. You're not really using your items in creative ways. You're kind of just using them sort of the same way throughout the whole game. And that started to, it came to kind of a flashpoint for me where it got to the point where I was about 2/3 of the way through the level and I saw a sign and I went up to read it and it said something like, "You're about halfway there. Like, the end's not close now." And for my job, I do a lot of work making spreadsheets and surveys. I do a lot of survey like building. And one of the things that we have to do is in the middle of the survey, we have to tell the person who's taking it, like, "You're 50% done," because if we don't, they'll give up and they'll stop taking the survey because they don't want to do it. And that, it almost felt like I was being patronized. Like, I paid money for your game, so why wouldn't I want to play it to the end of the level? I'm not going to give up when I can see the level end from here. And it seemed weird. It seemed like a weird thing for the game to tell me.
Why would they be employing that if you...
Exactly.
If you hopefully didn't need it.
Exactly. And so the reason we do it in surveys is because the survey taker is getting bored. And so there seemed to be this anxiety within the level design that I was going to get bored and stop. And so they had to put a sign with Corno next to it saying, like, "You're almost done." And it was weird. It felt like they didn't trust me as the player to finish the level. Like they were worried I was going to give up, and there were times when I kind of wanted to a little bit because the levels were just getting more, but they weren't getting more interesting.
Yeah, and I think this is also tied to sort of the mechanic, I'll say variety that was in there, because again, it wasn't like iterating as fully as I think it could on each new mechanic. It sort of toyed with a new mechanic and then dropped it for a new one in the next level.
Yes.
To a degree where there was really interesting stuff in there, but not fully explored, and I think this contributes to this feeling that you're having where each level picks up something new, and so it feels like it's almost starting you earlier.
Yeah, and I feel like it was almost like I was kind of being juggled almost, like between different items and item combinations, and I think it would have been really cool if it had been like, okay, for this level you get the wand and the drums but not the wings, and we've designed it specifically around that idea. And for this next one you get the wings and the drum but you don't get the wands, so you have to bounce and use the drum as you're bouncing. Like, I feel like that, like self-contained levels where you get a set of power-ups and have to find ways to use them creatively, I think would have been really, really interesting. But as it was essentially just longer or shorter versions with different like stuff, but it didn't really mesh with the power-ups that you had. There wasn't any cohesion between the things you had and the things you were expected to do with them.
It was this in between that the game had of do you keep the power-ups for the rest of your time, or do you get the power-ups at each individual level?
Yeah.
Where, you know, it suffered the worst parts of both fates.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I want to bring up, I think this is the last thing I want to bring up. Is there anything pressing that you have?
I'm looking through my notes. We've talked about pretty much everything.
Okay.
Oh, I do want to mention just as far as like glitch of the year, there was a very, very fun point at which I fell into. So when you fall into pools of water or lava or clouds, I guess, you're kind of supposed to zap out of them immediately back to the checkpoint. But I fell into some water, but there was like a little island in the middle of it, and I got stuck.
I may know where you're talking about, because I may have fallen in the same place. It was in the islands. Yeah. It was right near the end.
Yeah.
And you fall in water, but underneath it there's some land.
Yeah.
And so I fell, and then I was just standing there, and
yeah,
I couldn't get out.
I was expecting to be zapped back to the checkpoint, and so he's just kind of standing there, and I don't think that Newt has an idle animation, and so he was just staring straight ahead as water, like, poured in on him, and I was like, this is a metaphor for something, and I'm not sure what yet, but we'll get to it.
I might already have video of that, because I think I encountered the exact same thing.
Good, okay, good. It was endearing in kind of a special fun way. It was just, I was kind of like, you know, this game is, for all the things that are definitely wrong with it, I kept playing because the music was good, I liked the colors, and it was just endearingly glitchy, I felt, at points.
So in looking at the devs, I saw on their site, I was curious as to who these devs were, if they had made anything before. This seems to be their first game. Mm-hmm. I didn't look into the two devs enough to see like what previous work they may have done elsewhere, or if they're like, this is their first like commercial release of any kind in any team. But they had on the website what else they're working on. You know, it's some like glitch support, it's some, you know, bug fixes, stuff like that, but they're also saying that they want to add more speedrun support, which I found really interesting. Because I love speedrunning. I think that there are some elements of this game that could be really cool for speedrunning, such as the owls, because the owls tend to form platforms in groups of 4, but you can hop on an individual owl. And so I think that there could be a cool routing potential for saying, okay, which owls do I need to get? What is the minimum number of owls I need to get to make these jumps to get across?
Yeah.
But this is simultaneously a game that wants you to sort of be maybe a little bit slower, take your time through it. And I think, I wonder how much this is also connected with sort of the momentum building, because that kind of momentum is something that is really beneficial to a speedrun, where if you're doing good, you get to go farther. If you are keeping your momentum, you get to go further faster. In a game where otherwise that was, again, to its detriment.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think that there's a strange balance there of, if you want to support speedrunners as a dev, what sort of methods are best for you to go through. Because again, I think the owls I mentioned before, I think are one of the coolest mechanics in this game.
They really are, yeah.
And yeah, I think sort of overall, it seems like you got this you took this lesson away from it too, where there's a lot of really cool things in this game that maybe could have used some more refining, and hopefully, this game has been doing good enough for them that they get to continue refining whatever there is.
Yeah, I really hope so, because as I was playing through the game, like, there, if we wanted just to look at the negatives of it, like, it's kind of a glitchy platformer, but there's so much more on top of that. And as I was playing it, I can clearly see that there was like a lot of love put into its design, like a lot. And so I really just hope that they get to keep doing things that they love, like this, because they, like, the art and the music, like, so much of it was just full of this, like, I don't know, this, like, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but this, like, passion for wanting to watch a world light up around you. And I don't know,
It's all very sweet.
yeah, like, it had a lot of heart in it, and that, I think, is, like, one of the most important things for me when playing a game, is that I can see the heart that was put into it.
Yeah, and I think that's also
definitely a game where I can see that.
I think that's also, and it sounds like you as well, part of what made it sort of as disappointing as it was, that those elements of heart weren't as well integrated into the game as maybe they could have been, because, again, those are things that we like to look for, and we are willing to look past some of the elements for, when this could be a game where those musical elements, where those sort of passions for the world around you and the people in that world around you could be better demonstrated, be better convinced through the gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, it was maybe almost there.
Yeah.
Maybe a couple drafts away from being there.
Yeah.
I would at the very least watch an extended trailer for Newt 2. I would be incredibly curious about a Newt 2.
Well,
I'd be curious from a story perspective what a Newt 2 is, because this one kind of ends definitively.
Well, I'll be interested to see speedrunners have a go at this game, because there are almost certainly a lot of areas that could be exploited to go very fast.
Yeah, thank you for trying out this review stuff with me.
Absolutely. I had a great time playing through it. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, we'll see if this is a format we continue.
Yeah.
I think this turned out well, so we'll see how editing video goes. Dear viewer and or listener, farewell then. Bye.
Bye. Doodly 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 doo.
I don't know. I feel like, in my personal experience, and this is largely just me being big dummy, but especially with vlogs, I've found myself, even for things that were just that past week, having the exact same reactions that I have in the videos. Like, something happens and I'll go, ha! And as I hear myself go, ha! And it's really gratifying, because sometimes I get to experience, maybe someone is with me while I'm editing it and the sound is up, or they're watching the fully edited product. Like, recently, a friend from New Zealand was sending me video of them watching my old vlogs because they missed New Zealand.
Aww.
And there was one where like, it's this beautiful vista shot, and then she's off camera being like, am I in your way? Am I in your way? And I'm like, no, do you want to be? She's like, yeah. And I pan the camera over, and she's walking in front of me, but goes, and I start laughing, and I laugh as I laughed recording it. But in the video that she sent me of herself watching it, she laughs as, like, at the same time that she laughed then.
That's so good.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, oh man. Right. But yeah, I guess we just do the dang thing.